this, if not as a bit of a betrayal, then at least a rather odd arrangement when many of them regard themselves perhaps as perhaps I can ask Simon Hughes, you're live on Sky News, so I'm just asking Norman Baker whether either of you feel that some, and I'm sorry to be negative, we've done lots of the positive stuff already.
I believe you.
I'd be very positive.
Just going on to some of the potential problems with this. Do you have a feeling that some of your membership might feel a little bit betrayed is probably a bit of a strong word, but let down that you're in a coalition with a party with whom you've been fighting tooth and nail for years and years, and really your more natural bedfellows perhaps would be the Labour Party, and those left of centre voters who have been voting Liberal Democrat will feel a bit, well, amazed by this, really.
I think that's where a lot of people will start. They, of course, as of tonight, have seen no document. When they see what's been agreed, they will be hugely reassured, as Norman and my other colleagues and I have been. But secondly, they have to remember that there could have been a deal, a coalition with the Labour Party, had the Labour Party seriously wanted it. But at the moment of the heat of the battle, they left the field. They weren't willing. They didn't understand that the electorate said, none of you will have a majority. You have to work together. And when we tested them, when we talked to them, when we negotiated with them, in the end, they weren't up to doing a deal. And so I hope the people from the progressive left of centre will realise that it was the Labour Party who left us no option but to seek to make sure we had those progressive politics in a government with a Conservative Party. And if you look at the paperwork tomorrow, you'll see that it absolutely reflects that sort of agenda.
And it's extraordinary that in terms of the progressive policies we've been advocating, we've got the Conservatives to agree to them when Labour wouldn't. They rejected the suggestions we made for what you might call left of centre ideas. We've got the Conservatives to agree to some of them. So I think people, when they look at the detail, will be very pleased with it.
I suppose some people might say you did have a third way, as it were, which was not to become tainted by the Conservatives, just let them go their own way in minority government and keep your distance.
We looked at that, and that was an option tonight. And one of the points I made in my contribution in the meeting was that having come this far, not to be willing to take the responsibility of government would have undermined the case that colleagues and I have made for a long time, which is that we're ready for government, we're capable of government, we have people with the experience and the skill to govern, but more importantly that we believe that sometimes you have to govern and work with other people. And to have said, thank you very much, we've got the electoral result, gives us the balance of power, but we're not actually going to take any responsibility, would have been a bigger betrayal to our members. And of course it's more challenging to be the government, and you can get blamed for more, but you can do more. And we're here not to be things, we're here to do things.
So you are entering what is probably going to be a very difficult time of potentially quite what's been described as savage cuts in public spending. The economy is in a mess, there is a huge budget deficit, and you're the ones who are going to become very unpopular because you're going to have to, with the Conservative Party, deal with this.
Well, we've got protection in the agreement for those who are most vulnerable, for the lowest paid, and so on, for the disadvantaged children in our schools. The agreement protects those people that wouldn't be there in government without the Liberal Democrat involvement. So we can maybe be a real difference, I think, to what would have happened without us.
So your argument will be, in effect, that you put a kind of a compassionate break on perhaps some of the more excessive ideas of the Conservatives.
Well, I think that might be interpreted that way, mightn't it?
And also, I mean, Vince Cable has earned a reputation deservedly as somebody who understands how you can restructure the economy, how you can pay off the debt without the savage cuts that will harm the vulnerable. And the fact that he will have a key responsibility in government should be a reassurance. And the fact that we've always believed in trying to...
Thank you. I'm just going to interrupt you there because I gather that David Cameron's car is returning home to his home, I think in London from Downing Street, of course. Perhaps we can see those